Good morning and afternoon, Architecture 2 and Practicum students. And by now, you're probably well into your commercial project, and that's a good thing. This is going to carry over into next semester, and we'll have, I don't know, probably all together with all lessons involved, probably about 4, maybe 5 weeks of working on this. Right now, you're just kind of in the earlier stages of just kind of laying something down, getting the idea down on paper and into Revit. We're going to talk about some more detailed things a little bit later on. But what I wanted to talk about in this video is your wall systems. There are 5 commercial wall systems in Revit that are already put together. One is the exterior brick and CMU on metal stud. Exterior brick on CMU. Okay, CMU stands for concrete masonry units, those big concrete blocks that you may have seen lying around. If you're in the school building, if you're in this classroom itself, we do have that on our outer walls. You can actually see the CMU from here as far as the interior side of that wall. Exterior brick on metal stud is another one. Exterior CMU insulated. Okay, and that is a wall built of CMU concrete masonry units, and it has insulation. The insulation is on the exterior. Here's another one, exterior CMU on metal stud. And then there's an exterior EIFS on metal stud. That's actually 6 wall systems. I think I said 5 to begin with. But what EIFS stands for is exterior insulation and finish system. So it's the whole wall, everything all put together in panels that one would install or erect and connect together to make the structure. Now, a lot of commercial buildings, some of the cheaper commercial buildings that you'll see in a lot of areas, including our areas, sometimes are just metal walls with sort of the interior, built onto the inside, and the exterior and interior are not just 2 different sides of the walls. They're just completely different wall systems altogether. But we're going to use what's already in Revit, and I think we'll use, I don't know, I'm just going to use this. Let's take a little closer look. That's what we'll do. We'll take a little closer look at these and talk about what they consist of. So this first one, exterior brick and CMU on metal stud, we'll kind of go into the edit type, and here we have a side view of that. And let's see, let's do this. Let's zoom in. Now this wall is made of brick. It has a parapet. This is one of the only walls that already has a parapet on it. And you'll have to sweep a parapet or parapet, whichever you choose to call it. You'll have to sweep that on the top of the other walls, which we'll talk about that also a little bit later once we get closer to the end and start being more concerned with the exterior appearance of our building. But here's the parapet. Here's the brick finish. Now, this wall also has other components to it as well. It also has, down here at the bottom, it has these other little reveal sweeps in it. I'm not sure what that's made out of, but we'll find out once we kind of go in and start editing these things. It's probably just some sort of concrete material or something like that. You can also see there is just a little trim, a little concrete trim that kind of goes around before it gets down here to the CMU portion of it at the bottom. So this one is, pretty much a decorative wall already, but the components of it, you can see that it has 2 layers of exterior finish. It has the brick common and the concrete masonry units. It has a thermal air layer. It has membrane layer. It has substrate, which is pretty much common. What's not common about this is the double exterior finish, and we'll look at how to do stuff like that as well later on. Let's see, and then of course the rest is pretty much standard. Now these are using 6-inch metal studs, which is perfectly fine. Just keep those metal studs in there. You don't have to change it over to wood. Now, as far as what these walls are typically made of, it varies. There's various different applications and various different methods of putting all this together. They can be wood. They can be metal. Typically, a lot of times they're always metal. And two, as far as framing the building, there are also steel framing systems that are much more complicated and go a little bit further beyond what we have here currently in Revit with our wall systems. And we'll probably, if we have time, talk a little bit more about how to do that later on. I'm definitely not an expert in that field because I don't know a whole lot about commercial construction, but it is certainly viable that I can show you at least what I do know. All right. Let's look at another wall system. This is the exterior brick on CMU. Now it's pretty much the same, I think, as before. A little different. It doesn't have all the nice trim and things on it. It's just plain brick wall. And it has no parapet on top. We'll have to create that. But here we see the brick layer and then the airspace. And I'm not sure what that is. Let's see what that is. We'll click here on edit. So we got a finish air. We got like two. Okay, actually one of our air layers is rigid insulation. That's what this one is. This is the rigid insulation on the exterior of the wall. And then of course the structure, instead of being studs, any kind of a stud such as steel or wooden stud, these walls are actually structured with concrete masonry units and steel rebar that is inside of those concrete masonry units. And then, of course, I think there's actually the substrate is on the inside, on the interior side. That is your, a lot of times that is your plywood sheathing, but in this case, it is what we call metal furring. So it's kind of like these metal frames that are mounted up against the concrete blocks, are mounted to the concrete blocks, and they're just like frames on the wall. And those frames are made to hold like the interior finish, such as drywall. And I think here it's just drywall. So right here, if you see, it's got metal furring and then gypsum wallboard. Trying to think of what metal furring would look like. Let's see if we can pull up a picture of this. And let's see. Now here's a pretty good idea of what that is. This is some metal furring on a floor system, it looks like. So I'll bring this over to the other window. So they're just basically metal studs, but they're actually placed right up against the surface. They would be placed right up against the surface of that block wall and be made so that you can hold materials to that interior finish materials. Okay, and this is typically what that furring would look like right in here. These would be furring pieces. Here's a good example right here. So metal furring on the concrete wall. And then, of course, on top of that, you would place whatever finished material that you wanted inside the building. Okay, let's move that back over. The next wall. Now let's close that. Okay. Is the brick on metal stud. And it's going to look like this. And this is pretty much standard. With just metal studs. It's just a standard wall like you would normally build in a house, but instead of using wood studs, it appears to be using metal studs. Let's look at the material layer. So we got the finish, which is common brick. We got the thermal air layer right there. We have the membrane layer, which you really can't see that because there is no thickness to it. Then you got the substrate, which in this case is plywood sheathing. The structure, which is metal studs. That could also be wood studs. Doesn't have to be metal. Then you got the membrane, another interior membrane layer, no measurement, and then a finish, which is gypsum wallboard. Okay, now the reason they have two membrane layers, typically they will do this with two membrane layers in northern climates, not necessarily in Texas, but go ahead and just feel free to use these walls, even though they do have two membrane layers. Okay, another wall is CMU insulated. Okay, so we take a close look at this one. And let's see how they got this one structured. Okay, so the concrete masonry units are on the outside. It's some type of block, not necessarily a cinder block. These are only 7 5 inches thick, or 7 5/8 inches thick. And it's probably some sort of a, not like the big type of blocks that have the hollow core, but this is probably more like a solid block. They got the air layer, okay, and then they got another, well, it shows as a thermal air layer. However, the material is a rigid insulation, so that's on the exterior portion of that wall. They got the membrane layer, which you can't see. Then they got the structure right here, which is more concrete masonry units. So I think right here, the outside, not sure what the principles are behind that, but this would be what you would end up putting your finished material on. So this one would be considered not really to have a finish. The finish would probably be something like stucco, which would really only require you, maybe, I would have to look at it once it's structured and see, but just applying a color or something like that to it. Okay, so that is the structure. So that's actually everything here. If you notice, a lot of times the structure is between the core boundaries, which this one is, but there is no finish on the exterior side. If you look here, exterior side, there's the core boundary. So all of your structural stuff is right here. Usually there would be a line above this one, and that would have bricks or something like that on it. And then, of course, the interior, it's the same thing. The substrate, which is the metal furring, and then the finished gypsum wallboard. And here's the gypsum wallboard. Okay, so that is it for that wall. Let's go to another one, talk about this one. Okay, edit type, get the structure. Okay, this one does have a finish on it. Okay, it's got a finish of concrete masonry units. That may or may not be the final product. Sometimes it is, and they just paint the concrete masonry units to whatever color, and then sometimes they apply a finished material, usually a thin veneer type finished material, which can consist of anything from bricks to metal, just regular like sheet metal that you would see on a metal building. Just do yourself a favor and go around and look at some of these buildings in town, see if you can find a metal building. But then again, it could be stucco also placed on the outside of that. And this one, of course, all of these materials are actually placed on the outside of the core boundary and are not considered a structure. Everything else is pretty much the same. This one actually has an exterior substrate of plywood sheathing instead of a metal furring or anything like that. This one has a metal stud layer. Okay, and then there's a membrane layer on the inside with the finish, and there are no metal furrings on this one. They're just, let's see, vapor retarder. Okay, what is the metal stud layer? Okay, so they're just attaching the, right here, they're just going to attach the drywall straight to the metal studs. Okay. All right, last one. These are, and the thing too about wall materials and these wall systems, especially on commercial buildings, is they're always coming up with new technology and new things. This is the exterior insulation finish system. So if we're looking at this one, then let's go to the whole structure of it. We got a finish on the outside, which the finish is actually the exterior insulation. Now, I'm not sure how they actually put this together in Revit, but typically there would actually be something on the outside of that, another finished material on the outside of that, not just the plain insulation. Just to kind of show you an image of this. Here's one right here. If you can see where my cursor is circling, and you can see this one has like a veneer brick over the insulation. And these are just really thin bricks. They're not real live bricks. They're just little thin cut bricks that cover that insulation. Over here on this picture is more than likely some type of thin veneer block placed over that insulation. And then over here in this picture is metal. And this, of course, shows you a little bit more about how these are structured. If you want to go to this, you can really just Google EIMA and you'll find this very easily. But it's at EIMA.com. And they talk all about the EIFS wall systems. There are different versions of these wall systems as well. Here's a project gallery. So here you can see the exterior finishes that are actually over that insulation. So that wall that's in Revit is really not officially finished if it just has the insulation on the outer layer. But all of these would be different types of block, concrete, metal. There's another type of material, I forget what it's called, but it's made of paper, but it's all compressed and glued and all that kind of stuff. Almost like plywood, but it's very weather resistant once they get done with it. Almost like a plastic type of material, but it's a lot better than plastic. So that is what would go on the outside of this wall. However, they have that layered or labeled as a finish. But they have all the other standard layers. They even have plywood sheathing right here on the outside. The structure, 6-inch metal studs, and membrane and finish on the inside. Okay, so that... Was there one more? No, there wasn't. That's it. That's all of the wall systems that are in Revit and kind of what they are and what they're used for. They would not apply to absolutely every situation, but they do seem to be very common ones. Hence, they have them here in Revit. So just use those walls. We'll come back later, maybe do some aesthetic improvements to them. You know, one thing we are going to focus on are the roofs. The roofs on a commercial building are very different. We're not going to go too deep into foundations. I'll probably do a little bit on foundations, but I'm really not that knowledgeable on commercial foundations. I have a little bit more knowledge on the roofing systems of the commercial roofs, which are what considered flat roofs. But other than that, that's what we have. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. And when you actually put these walls down, let's take this wall system, for instance, this basic wall system. You definitely want to change your location line because we already have a slab down. We're going to put these walls on top of our slab. So the location line, you want to be finish face exterior, and you may even want, depending on the finish that you're going to apply to this building, you may even want it to be offset from that, set a little bit further on the inside, but well, don't worry about it right now. Just go ahead and do it like this for now. So finish face exterior, and then we just draw the walls on top of the foundation. Okay, and there we go. And then of course you'll go back and set the heights of them because the flat roof is really going to be inset inside of the walls. Front wall is 16 feet. The side and back walls are 14 feet. We do that mainly because the front wall is going to be like a facade. That is spelled F-A-C-A-D, facade. Look that up. And basically what it means is it's just the front of the building. It's a decorative front to the building. All right, so that's all there is to that. From here, you want to add like other independent, individual spaces. You want to divide your space up into 4, probably. You can give more space to one than you do another. That's okay. You'll go ahead and place walls in common areas such as, break rooms, offices, bathrooms, storage areas. And then, of course, come out to the front and design that to more or less fit your needs. For whether it's going to be one of the different types of businesses, food service, retail, medical. What was the other one? I forget. It's on the top of my head, but I don't remember. Or office space. That's what it was. Office space. Okay. So have fun with that. And, if you have any questions, just let me know.